Hey, what's going on, guys? Gamerdude back once again with another episode in our Just the Facts series. Today we are discussing Resident Evil 8, as you can see from the title, and everything we want to see from it after the wake of Resident Evil 7. And now, as I've said in the last couple of weeks, there aren't really that many topics for me to cover at the moment, seeing how E3 has beaten me to the punchline, with most of the reveals shown there. But once again, it's not going to stop me from continuing this series, which you guys really do seem to enjoy, so let's get on with it. So initially, when Resident Evil 7 first released back in 2017, it was most assuredly a much needed rejuvenation for the classic horror franchise. Capcom departed from its usual formula in a big way, and even took the opportunity to embrace new experiences with PlayStation VR. Now, this risk most assuredly paid off, and a large portion of fans and critics embraced the changes, with a keen eye on what the next game might bring into the series. 2 years on from Resident Evil 7's release, and shortly after a very successful remake of the second Resident Evil game, I thought it would be a good time to look to the future and have a look at what the future of the franchise might actually look like. Details on the next game are kind of scarce, but I did my best to get as many facts surrounding the game as possible. So this is what I came up with. Well, I first came across Resident Evil in my early years as a gamer. The first one I actually played was called Resident Evil Survivor, and that allowed you to use the old G-Con 45 plastic gun thingy to move around the environment and kill the zombies. The game was more of an indie game than a typical version of the titles that were previously released. However, it offered an interesting look at what Capcom could or would do with the game in the future. But more on that shortly. And as the years have progressed, the older the games, such as Survivor, have been buried and forgotten. Now, almost 2 decades later into the franchise, it has become a beloved franchise for fans around the world. So, whether or not it's actually called Resident Evil 8, we don't know that for sure. But Resident Evil 7's executive producer, Jun Takeuchi, has said plans for a sequel are, quote, already in motion. In light of that, I've gathered everything I've found separating fact from rumour regarding Resident Evil 8 right here just for you. So, yeah, I rambled a little bit there. I said we were going to get to it, but yeah, now let's actually cut to the chase. What actually is it? Is it another addition into the successful horror franchise, or something entirely different? Again, more on this later. What will we actually be able to play it on? Next gen? Current gen? Console exclusive? Unfortunately, this information is currently unknown. What will we actually be able to play it on? Again, currently unknown, due to the fact the game is probably still in post-production and it doesn't even have pre-alpha footage yet. So, although we know that work has started on Resident Evil 8 in some form, we don't have any details about the game just yet, or when we can expect to see it released. If we were to hear anything about it anytime this year, it will most likely be the annual Gamers Conference in December. That would definitely be the most likely candidate, seeing how we didn't get any information on it at E3 this year. So, digging into forums and separating fact from rumours and whatnot, I've found out that Resident Evil fans are actually hoping for a new entry into the series. You know, their hopes are rising after a 2019 financial briefing from Capcom, which confirmed the publisher has numerous unannounced titles in development. The games are being developed on the RE engine, used for Resident Evil 7 and the Resident Evil 2 remake, as well as Devil May Cry. So it's highly likely Resident Evil 8 could be one of them. It's also especially possible, as Capcom has said that it will be using the engine into the next generation of consoles, which is fantastic. Capcom getting back into regular game releases is exactly what fans want. No doubt we can expect a new Devil May Cry game at some point, probably next year or the year after. But perhaps we will see Dead Rising reappear. Will they reboot that series? Will they continue that series? I'd love for that to reappear, because that is one of my favourite titles that Capcom have done, as opposed to Marvel vs. Capcom. But yeah, it's as I said, it is all entirely possible, given numerous titles are actually in development. However, only time will tell, given that we are expecting the next generation of consoles to fly onto shelves next year. So it's unlikely we'll see any of these products on the current generation. So yeah, moving back to what I was saying earlier about when we can actually expect to see this game. Though we haven't received any kind of release date on the next Resident Evil, or even a name for the next Resident Evil game, we do know that the development process has started, or it's midway through at least. We've known since early in 2017, when Resident Evil 7's executive producer Jun Takeuchi confirmed it. He confirmed it in an interview for an official making of, so one of those behind the scenes making of things. He did it in a documentary for the game. Takeuchi said that work on the next game is, quote, already in motion, and that was 2 years ago, so we can only assume that it's at least halfway through by now. Because usually on big projects like this it takes 3, maybe 4 years before they've got a proper alpha footage that they want to show off. But in the same interview, Takeuchi also elaborated on what the game might look like. The first thing that he confirmed was that Resident Evil 7 was the start of a new direction for the series, and that it was the start of a new kind of survival horror, and of a new series on its own. He also stated, "We're already thinking about various plans for the next game." He then revealed, "But we also want to see how we can continue to evolve survival horror itself. In the next few years, technology will continue to advance, and what players want may also change." What this tells us, and me, just as a fan in general, is that Capcom will be taking serious advantage of any new technologies in the near future with any and all of their future projects. Like, they're probably going to be one of the first companies that gets it out there on the next generation of consoles. Like, of course, Sony's going to be wanting to beat people to the punchline. You know, Microsoft are going to be wanting to do that, but with Microsoft only releasing their console in December of next year, whereas the PlayStation's out first, that gives PlayStation for next year the home field advantage for games to come to their new console first. So it would stand to reason that we are going to get some new Capcom games next year on the PS5. Okay, so, admittedly, it is hard to draw any solid information from a statement that was given 2 years ago, and from anything I've said in this video. Just down to the fact we haven't gotten anything concrete since 2017. When Takeuchi spoke in this interview, it's clear that planning was still in the very early stages, and it's quite possible that things such as plot and settings were still yet to be nailed down. I mean, they probably didn't even have a script or cast for the game at this point. While I'd like to surmise that Resident Evil 8 will build on the fresh new feel of Resident Evil 7, Takeuchi's comments on wanting to evolve the genre as well as capitalise on changing technologies and player desires suggests that the team aren't locking themselves into a formula just yet, and we can expect something that is going to be entirely new. So, just as Resident Evil 7 introduced virtual reality, in an interesting experiment that played on new first-person perspectives of the game, Resident Evil 8 could do the same all over again. But just picture it on the next-gen console. It would look absolutely brilliant, and it would feel like they're actually in the room with you. Technology is developing that much. It wouldn't surprise me if the next VR headset has sensors all over it, where if you get shot, you feel a little pinch or something. If you get bitten by a zombie, you feel a pinch or something. I don't know. Maybe they'll put fake blood all over it or something. I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is technology is developing so fast, it's not that out there for them to do something like that. But we could see another perspective change. The team could find new ways to integrate virtual reality technology, or it could even dive into new augmented reality technology. But that's, let's be honest, probably not going to happen until a very distant future, because augmented reality is kind of we're going into Batman territory there. Augmented reality training online. We'd need a fucking cape and cowl for that. But in part 1 of the whole making of documentary from Resident Evil 7, it gives us a good insight into the kinds of gameplay experiments the team were actually looking into for future projects. It does also seem like Takuchi is telling fans not to assume there's a new formula from which the developers won't waver. Resident Evil will be taking a survival horror approach to the creation of survival horror adapt. It's kind of like change and stay on your toes, because you don't know what new technology or fan requests are around the corner. So what that tells me is that we can expect whole new things, like different choices, like branching off elsewhere, kind of like a Telltale game series, where like you can choose to save this guy, or you can choose to walk away from this guy, and later on he's still alive and he comes back to try and kill you or something. I don't know, something like that. Takuchi also stated that he believes this is what survival horror is all about, before adding that the next Resident Evil game, and one after that, even future Resident Evil games, will feature characters getting through crisis like this. It's this essence of core survival horror concept of people overcoming the odds that Takuchi says the series will always retain. So, as I said earlier, from this, at the very least, we can assume that the future of the series will place a heavier focus on the survival horror elements showcased in the 7th game in the series, rather than diving back into the more heavy action gameplay of the releases such as Resident Evil 4. So, will we see a new location? Possibly new enemies? Again, this isn't very clear. The fact we haven't heard a damn thing regarding the game, all we have are a few hints and facts as to where the next game is actually going to go, doesn't really tell us much. And as I said earlier, it's hard to divulge any proper information right now. All I've managed to find is this, and this is just a couple of things from 2 years ago. And I even watched the documentary from the making of thing, and it didn't really show us that much. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's going to be an entirely new formula? Do you think it's just going to be a completely VR game that it's going to be a next generation game, and next generation games are going to focus solely on VR? Do you think it's going to be a follow-up to Resident Evil 7 or a new game of its own? Do you think we'll see characters from the movies appearing? So, the chick from the actual movies, I can't remember her name. She has those loopy mind power things, whatever they are. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe in the next game it could be that your character's infected, and you've got to find Umbrella to find a cure or something. I don't know. They could go a number of ways with it. The fact of the matter is, let me know what you guys think. I would really like to hear your thoughts and feelings on this, because Resident Evil, it's always been a game close to my heart. You know, it's like I said, I had it from the PS1 on Resident Evil Survivor with that whole plastic gun thing, which was really fucking awesome. So yeah, don't hesitate to let me know what you guys think. But anyway, that's it for this episode. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope I've expanded your gaming knowledge and given you some details as to the future of this game. So stay tuned later tomorrow, because we will be continuing what is left of our Telltale game series with The Walking Dead Season 3, so don't miss it. Shout out to all subscribers, old and new. We are now at 920, getting ever so close to that goal of 1k, which will be an absolutely amazing achievement. It would be such an amazing milestone. And really, I can't thank you all enough for the continuous love and support and views of my content. So that being said, this has been Just the Facts with Gamerdude. Happy gaming, and I'll catch you all in the next one, guys.